Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today I will be welcoming a great character actor who you know from many movies, Danton Stone. He was in such movies as National Lampoon's Joy of Sex, Band of the Hand, Eight Men Out, a lot of great stuff he was in. He was in Crazy People. He was on Roseanne. Worked a lot with Tom Arnold afterwards on his short-lived shows in McHale's Navy. I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that stuff. And it's going to be pretty cool. Danton Stone's one of those guys you see him and it's like, oh, that guy. You know, he's a great character actor. And it'll be great to talk to him. A journeyman. So yeah, here is my interview with Danton Stone. Hey, Danton.
Hey, Tommy. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you, sir?
I feel good.
Good. This is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, not at all. I'm happy to talk to you. How do you know my work, or how did you find out about me?
It's all listed here. From Joy of Sex to Band of the Hand. I saw you in everything.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, going back in time, did you gravitate toward acting early on in your childhood?
I was, I did a 9-year-old, explosion when I was, I got it in my head to write, a play based on the Thor comic books. I was obsessed with, Thor comic books and Spider-Man and Marvel comics. So I used to hang out with my friends in Queens. I'm from New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And we just would play, typical games and sports and things like that. But, one day I was sitting around with my friends and we were obsessing about Thor comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started, I kind of enlisted them to start improvising on one of the comic books. And they started doing it, and none of us had done had any interest in acting or writing or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But these guys were sort of smart, kind of sharp kids, and we easily bored like I was. And we started putting this play together. And within a few weeks, it was a full-blown 20-minute play. So I went down to the Boy Scouts. It was Boy Scouts night. It was performance night at the Boy Scouts, again in Queens.
Yeah.
And they were doing plays like Ferdinand the Bull and, Christmas Story and, Christmas plays and circus plays, kind of conventional stuff. And I kind of bowled my way to the front of the line, and I said to the guy taking names and who was going to sign on for that night, I said, we're doing Tales of Asgard. Written and directed and starring myself and my friends. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, you're not a Boy Scout, so you can't really do this tonight. And I started begging him, and I just all of this stuff was just sort of impulsive in the moment, kind of I just said, look, we worked really hard. It's a really great show. And we went on, and the guy just had mercy on me because I was so insistent.
Yeah.
And we went on after, I think, Ferdinand the Bull. Pretty boring show. And we kind of kicked the shit out of it. I mean, we kind of we went into high gear. We made this drama, Thor and his father and his brother and death and destruction and revenge. And it was this whole little revenge play. And then it was like people were on their feet. It was astonishing. And, and that was the last thing I did for then I clammed up for 9 years, when, completely went, inside myself. And then when I was 18, I dropped out of college, and got a job. Again, I just jumped back in and just got a job touring in a children's theater company and went to acting school, like serious acting school.
Yeah.
And then I haven't looked back, 45 years ago.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, that's pretty much the way I got into it.
Yeah, the day that Stan Lee died, that was like the saddest day for all of us superhero fans.
I know. He was like, the guy was just having fun.
Right.
And working with his friend Jack Kirby, the cartoonist, and those other guys, those other great drawers. And but he didn't know that he was laying down a way of looking at the world for a bunch of bored kids, which he was really a great artist. I was really influenced by comic books.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, after high school and you're studying acting, are you studying with any prominent teachers out there?
Yeah, my main thing was, I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts when I was in high school on weekends, and that's when and being there, I started. I did some plays there, and I kind of, again, I was a pretty excitable kid and had a lot of energy, and even though I didn't have training, really good training, the Academy was kind of connected to movies and TV auditions.
Yeah.
Because they were looking for young actors, unknowns, and so I was doing a play there, and there's this casting director, great famous casting director named Lynn Stallmaster.
Oh yeah.
Lynn, and he cast like a bunch of great movies and stuff, and he saw me in a play that I did at the Academy, and he said, I'm reading this movie, I'm reading kids for this young sailor in this really tough-minded Jack Nicholson movie called The Last Detail.
Mm-hmm.
Hal Ashby was the director, and he was a great director in the 1970s, 80s.
Yep.
Passed away, rather early, but he was a major director. And he said, "Why don't you come in and read for me and see if you're okay, and then if you can calm down enough, because again, I was pretty excitable." And he said, "You can read for Hal Ashby and Jack Nicholson and this kind of thing." So really, that's just I just went in, took the moment, did a good reading. I didn't get the part, but it was like, I was only 16 then. I was still in high school, going to school on weekends, acting school on weekends. But that was already like, I was already going in there and challenging myself in pretty high level, intense situations, competing for parts, on a pretty high level. And so, it was a pretty short walk between that and then, somebody telling me, when I was doing children's theater and stuff after I dropped out of school, really working for, bright, nice, mentoring kind of people. They said to me, "Hey, you're a good kid, and you got a good heart, and you're got a lot of energy, but you're going to be a really shitty actor if you keep going the way you do without any serious training." So there's this guy named Bill Esper who taught at the neighborhood playhouse.
Right.
You can go and interview with him, see if he'll take you, and really ask him hard, because he doesn't just take anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But go and take this seriously. Take this work serious, and don't fuck around. Because you want to do this for your whole life. And I took that to heart, because the guy who told me it was a really smart, really good guy, and he gave me my first job and stuff. And he was telling me to take myself seriously and take the work seriously, and train. And so Bill Esper, who just passed away this last year, God bless him, he was really a genius. He was one of the great acting teachers of my day, and he did take me, and he did break me down and build me up, and he busted me, a new one every week, so that I wouldn't be dishonest and presentational and phony.
Yeah.
That I would be a really honest, dig hard, work hard actor, and he gave me that work ethic and devotion, and that's how and from the time I was 20 years old, I was done working with him, and I went the next 45 years of my life living with that ethos, and that to honor that the people who I worked with early in my career.
Wow, that's amazing. Was David Rashi in your class?
No, David was in. I know he did work with Bill, but he was actually a little before me.
Mm-hmm.
He might have studied. He was around the same time as me, but he was maybe a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you knew about David working with Bill too, huh? Because you spoke to him.
No, I saw an interview he did years ago where he talked about being in his class after he left Second City.
Oh, okay. He's a Second City guy.
Oh yeah, it's funny. He didn't. The whole world doesn't know that he worked with them until he did some movies with them later on, right? But he was a stage member of Second City with, I think, John Candy and Harold Ramis and so many those greats.
Wow, what interesting. Well, boy, I mean, Bill has really. I got to tell you, Bill's worked with some incredible people, and he's trained 2 or 3 generations of actors, and guys and women who have really distinguished careers. A lot of them attribute their success and the power of their work to having had Bill there at the beginning. He worked with Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
God, really, just William Hurt. Fantastic people. Really great people.
You get a great.
Yeah, I admired him so much. And then I got into the circle. I don't know, if you know about my early theater work, but I was lucky enough to get also. To boom my way into Circle Repertory Company at a young age, which at the time was one of the 3 or 4 most distinguished acting and theater companies in New York. And it was also one of the reasons why they allowed me to be seen, for this role that I was up for. And I eventually booked the part, and it launched my stage career. Was because they'd heard that I worked with Bill Esper.
Wow.
He had that kind of a reputation of depth and honesty and seriousness. And yeah, man. And then Circle Repertory. I was in that company for 25 years, and that had a long illustrious run. And I did plays by Lanford Wilson, who was a great Pulitzer Prize winner. He was the greatest writer I knew. He was one of the greatest artists I ever met, and he was a multiple award-winning playwright. And he wrote 2 roles for me that I did both roles subsequently on Broadway. They started off Broadway and in regional theater, and we moved them to the Circle Rep and ran there. But I ended up doing those roles on Broadway. And in those days, and part of Circle Rep's system was that the writers wrote parts for the acting company.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote parts that were specifically to challenge and taper to the actors. And I was in that great group, of which people like Jeff Daniels, William Hurt, Nancy Snyder, Susie Kurtz. I mean, great, amazing people were Johnny Hogan. Kathy Bates. Just such unbelievable talents. And just to be around people like that all the time, and to have writers of Lanford's caliber, writing for me, it gave me a chance to really define myself as an actor and be an artist. Not just, not just somebody who was trying to, go up there and, show off and look great and be handsome and, and debonair, but also, make a part in a play and part of a landscape come to life. My part of it.
Yeah.
And that's really how I made my bones, and that's how I've tried to do it. And I've had good years and bad years, and it's not always I don't always succeed in doing a great job, but I always try. And those people, man, being around those people when I was young really made me take a certain approach to my work, which has just been a gift. It's just been it's given me a good life. It's made my life worth living because of the seriousness. And again, like I say, I mean, it didn't always go. It didn't always work out for me. I mean, I sometimes I got in things and either the thing I was in wasn't good, or frankly, maybe I wasn't that good, and and I didn't have a success in every part, but there was a certain.
Mm-hmm. Hello? Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you, you did a theater production of Extremities with Kathy Bates.
I did, yes. Sarandon, Kathy Bates. I worked with I did a number of productions of Extremities, but Kathy was definitely one of the people I did it with. Mm-hmm. I was also in 5th of July on Broadway with Kathy Bates. She's pretty amazing. But, God, so is Sarandon. My God. Do you know that play, Extremities? You know about that play? That was a pretty controversial play in its time.
I heard it was controversial, yeah. I've never seen it, though.
Yeah, it was really, it was the first play, the prominent play in the American theater where an actual simulated rape goes on stage. And then in the aftermath, the woman who's being raped turns the tables on the rapist and sprays bug spray in his eyes and kind of bashes him in the head and drags him into the fireplace and locks him in the fireplace. Mm-hmm. Because she's just adrenalized and freaked out, and she locks this guy in the fireplace, and because she doesn't want to, and she hesitates to call the cops and turn him in because she's pretty sure that he's gonna figure out if this guy's a real mouthy hustler, and she's gonna figure out a way to make her guilty for being victimized.
Right.
Anyway, it becomes kind of it was pretty intense, fantastic theater experience, and I played the rapist in that, and that was I did that with a number of fine actors. One of whom was amazing to work with was Susan Sarandon. I did that with in New York, and Kathy Bates was in that too. Ellen Barkin, there's good people.
Yeah, that's a great cast. Did you move to L.A. by the time you did Joy of Sex?
No, I jobbed of all my L.A. jobs. I was kind of a homeboy in New York wise. I really I had by that time I spent the last I stayed in New York and really went on the road a lot to various regional theaters or on location for films and television. And every time I got a job in Los Angeles, like Joy of Sex or films or TV that I did, I would just hop on a plane and go do the job. And then the day the job was ended, I just would go home because, I had an apartment in New York, had a wife, kid, and we were so dug in. We loved it so much, and I loved raising my daughter in New York. My wife, Rebecca, and I really wanted to raise our kid in New York City. Mm-hmm. Did. And so I just would work in L.A. and then come back. But Joy of Sex was, that was a road job and a fun one. And yeah.
Yeah, that was a standard audition then.
Yeah, just an audition. Again, somebody saw me in a play that was producing for Paramount Pictures, and he called me in to meet Martha Coolidge and Gary Nardini, who was a producer at Paramount, and I just read for it and booked it. I mean, a lot of the parts that I got, have just been, sometimes I'd get lucky and somebody would offer me something, without an audition.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'd have to go in and win the part. And, I mean, I'm grateful I was able to do that a few times, because that's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a part from an audition, because it just is. I mean, it's easier to get to do a part if somebody just asks you to do it, because there's an element of relaxation in there.
Sure.
It's hard to, yeah.
Wow.
So, but like I say, I would go to LA. Sometimes I'd go out for pilot season too.
Yeah.
Like I had a pretty lean year. 1 year around '91. I just did a film called Once Around with Richard Dreyfuss and Holly Hunter and Jenna Rowlands, directed by Lasse Hallström, and it was a wonderful film and I had a great part and it was a great experience. But it didn't do nothing for me. I mean, I didn't. I like it when I came in. It came and it didn't do any business. So I was back. I was driving a cab after it came out, and I said, "Geez, I have to go to LA and maybe try to my hat in my hands and try to pitch myself for something, get some work in TV or something." So I did that, and I was staying on my friend's couch, and they called me and they said, on Roseanne, the first Roseanne show, they're looking for a guy to play the next door neighbor, and they saw you. They actually saw the Once Around movie. They thought you were pretty good, so they'll give you a crack at this part. So I went in there and I read for it, and there was a bunch of other guys in the waiting room. Some of them looked like me, some of them looked completely different. But I went in there, and it happens that one of the producers of the Roseanne show at the time, and they were putting me on tape. Roseanne wasn't there, but because she was the guiding intelligence of the show. She's going to be the one who makes the decision, but she's not there in the room with you because that made her uncomfortable. So she just look at your tape, your performance on tape. So they're taping me, but in the room is one of the producers, and he had been a producer on a TV show, my first TV show that I did in 1981, which is a cop show called I Shied.
Yeah.
Which I played a guy who was an international diplomat's son who was also a drug dealer and a kind of a nasty little puke is how they described my character. It would be Puke, and I was a nasty little puke in that. But anyway, this guy Todd was the producer of that show. And then when I walked into the Roseanne audition, he was in the room, and because I'd worked for him in the past, I felt somewhat comfortable being there, and I was able to relax into my audition, and they put it on tape. And that job, getting that job, Tommy, that audition for that job got me 5 years of work.
Wow.
I only did 5 episodes of the Roseanne show.
Right.
Tom Arnold was the producer and also in the Roseanne show too, because he was married to her at the time.
Yeah.
Tom Arnold, he and I had a connection and struck up a friendship, and he liked my work, so he gave me a lot of work. So it was like sometimes you just, by giving one good audition, you can get like a whole subsequent run of jobs, and that's what happened with that one trip to LA. When I was pretty down on my luck, but I got like 5 extra years. I was able to be in shows. and not have to, do some schlepper job, because, that audition was there.
Yeah.
So, again, there's so many auditions I've gone to where I didn't get it, close, but no cucumber, whatever, or just not right, not even in the ballpark. But the one or two that, you go to that you get, sometimes they have that magic quality of giving you a whole lot of work after that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's what I've heard. So what was it like working with Martha Coolidge?
Well, Martha's sharp as a tack. This was at a time when it was very unusual for women to direct,
right.
Decent-sized budget Hollywood films. And this was the year of, Revenge of the Nerds, Joy of Sex. I think Revenge of the Nerds was a guy. Not that. It was Amy Heckerling was the other one. She did some...
Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there was... So Martha was in that crop of, shiny, bright, talented women who were, making, were getting a crack at decent-sized budget Hollywood films. And, and so, there was a certain amount of heat, in the moment and in being in the ensemble of that film. And I had a great part. It was a very funny part. And I, it was one of those experiences where, I felt very relaxed from the first shot. For some reason, I just clicked with the role. I clicked with Martha. Martha enjoyed pretty much everything I did. There was no, where they have to take you aside and start talking to you about, maybe you should go take acting lessons or something, which, that can happen. Sometimes you don't click with a role. But I clicked with Farouk in Joy of Sex. And from the first shot I did, and the first scene, pretty much I just trusted my instincts, and the next 6 weeks on the film was pretty much of a love fest. I mean, I just every day going to work was like, how many different ways can I have a good time doing this? It was a dream job.
Yeah, I know that it was originally years before going to be a John Belushi vehicle, and then he died, and then there was a series of rewrites and all that stuff.
Yes, that's right. The genesis of that screenplay was exactly that, and it was more of a National Lampoon than Joy of Sex thing when Belushi was connected to it. And then when we did it, and I think when it was finally released, the National Lampoon was no longer associated with it. It was just the Joy of Sex.
Right.
But of course, it started out as a sex manual, the book that it was taken from. So, it was a pretty long walk between when it was sold to the movies from being a sex manual to Belushi being connected to it as a National Lampoon product, and then finally Martha's finished film for Paramount as simply The Joy of Sex with Danton Stone as Farouk.
Yeah. You're the fifth person from the movie that I've talked to, and they all said, yeah, it was a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. Martha was just, she's just really just bright, sharp, fun, and she definitely, she ran a great set.
Mm-hmm.
People are just really good. They're good with actors. They're good with writers. They're good with crew. Some people are just gifted.
Yes, indeed. And then you did a movie called Maria's Lovers, which had a great cast in it.
Oh boy, well, I know. God, I get to hang out with Robert Mitchum.
Yeah. How was that?
That's well, I mean, I'm not, for a kid from Queens who grew up watching $1 Million Movie week, how many Robert Mitchum movies did I see? So when I walked onto my first day, that in my trailer's right across the way from and I looked across the way, and there's Robert, as I got to call him,
Yeah.
or Mitch, sitting smoking a cigarette on his right in front of his trailer, sitting on the steps like I was going to be doing.
Yeah.
And I looked over at him, and I just waved to him, and he called me over. You know, he was like, you know, he was between shots, like I was.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you know, let's hang. What's your name? I said, Danny Stone. He said, where are you from? New York City. And I said, what can I say? I'm a fan. And he said, oh, okay, good. That's fine. And then he just wanted to talk and bullshit with me and tell stories. And, oh, God. I mean, what a great, first of all, there are other people in there that are fantastic, too. But, listen, I'm a movie fan. I mean, Robert Mitchum, just being able to hang with him is like enough to make, an experience worthwhile.
Yeah.
But of course, you have other people there, right? I mean, you get Stasi Kinski and Keith Carradine, John Goodman, who I also worked with on Roseanne.
Bud Cort.
You got unbelievably talented people. John Savage. I don't know if you remember John Savage.
Oh yeah, he was in The Deer Hunter.
Yeah, he was a tremendous actor, and and Andrei Konchalovsky, director of that, was a fascinating guy, very interesting. Of course, again, that working with European, foreign directors, which I've done a couple of times, is always very different than working with American directors, because in Europe they're taught to do everything. So like Lasse Hallström, who directed me in Once Around with Holly Hunter and Richard Dreyfuss, Lasse Hallström is a Swedish man, obviously,
right.
And he was telling me that he was used to. This was his second Hollywood film. He'd done What's Eating Gilbert Grape before he did our film. But Lasse told me that he wasn't used to only having the job as director. That he was used to, when he was directed films in Sweden, he was also the costume designer. He was also the editor. He was also the fill in the blank. He was, the director of the film. In a lot of the European directors, they're used to doing everything. They have a hand in every department. And of course, American films are, so much more bigger budgeted, but they're also specialized. Everybody has its own specialty, and the director is just the director. And Konchalovsky on Maria's Lovers had a similar kind of an attitude, which was like, he wanted to have his hand in absolutely everything.
Yeah.
But anyway, great energy also on that film. Great, great, exploring interesting material. Shot that in a, way out of the way in a small town in Pennsylvania to get that atmosphere that we needed. But, it's nice to take a month out of your life and go and live a completely different life. And that's what you get to do when you're an actor. You get to pretend that you live differently for as long as you're on a film or a play.
And then you did the underrated action thriller I mentioned before, Band of the Hand.
Yes, that was in Miami. That was that was a rough experience.
It was rough.
Yeah, that was rough. It was a rough shoot. Yeah, I don't think I want to talk about that.
Okay. We don't have to talk about that one.
I don't want to say anything rough.
Okay. You played a hired killer in 8 Men Out.
Yeah, that was fun. Ooh, that was fun. Oh, I love that. I love that. My favorite part in that role is John Sayles. Oh boy, what intelligent guy. And when he sets up a shot, when he sets up what your day's work is going to be, I mean, he get you're like your heart is beating a mile a minute because he's describing what you're supposed to function, you're supposed to have in the movie. Mm-hmm. And he's getting so worked up. And he said to me, he says, all we're going to do is shoot you right now. Okay, this is your part. He says, this takes place in this was the Black Sox scandal of 1911 or whatever. You know, it took. I mean, and he says, he says your part is you're the little assassin. He said like you're a short. He says I want you because you're a short assassin. Yeah. When I look at you, I see a little assassin. So he says, he's like a giant guy. He's like 6. I'm like, I'm not like a midget, but I'm like a normal short, like 5'8" guy. But like John Sayles is like Land of the Giants. So he's looking down at me and he's saying, I want to see your face when you take the gun out of your suitcase and put the gun together. You put the thing in the thing and you put the thing and you polish the thing. I want to see the look on your face and what you're thinking while you put your gun together, because you're about to go and threaten this player and tell him you're going to kill his wife. Mm-hmm. And so I want to see that. Like, I want to see you thinking that while you're putting your gun together. And that's all I'm going to shoot today. It was like, I mean, what would you do if somebody said that to you? I mean, how would you feel?
I would feel gratified.
Exactly.
To have a director that communicates, and lets you have freedom. Yeah.
Great. Exactly. I was totally grateful and excited. And that kind of communication was just so amazing. Plus, we also had like a really good. Plus, John Sayles runs a very, very democratic, very Hamish friendly set. Mm-hmm. Uses all its friends over and over again. Right. So the cast and the crew, everybody comes to dailies. At the end of the day, everybody. And I mean, I didn't have a big part in that. I think I was on it for a week and a half. Mm-hmm. But everybody's a key player. Everybody's invited to dailies. Everybody's allowed to, and then we played full court basketball on Saturdays, and and it was, I mean, guys like David Strathairn and Jace Alexander and John Cusack and
Charlie Sheen.
Really, I mean, these great guys, amazing guys, playing ball with them, and then and working with them during the week and playing ball with them on the weekend. It was really fun. It was great. It was exciting.
Yeah, I mean, Sayles, he's a perfect example of an anti-Hollywood genius. He makes these little movies on his own, but yet he has studios distribute them,
Yes, because of the quality of his work.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's a boy. He's really his films are amazing. Tell me some other John Sayles films that you like.
Brother from Another Planet.
Isn't that amazing, that film?
Yeah. My favorite from him, and I've recommended this to a lot of lesbian women, is a movie called Leanna.
Oh, beautiful movie.
I love that movie. It should be more famous than it is, I think, because it's a real, story about, coming out. I love it.
That's a beautiful film. He also made this film, City of Hope.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible film, too. He's such a good filmmaker. Just love his films. Yeah. But Brother from Another Planet, I went to see that. I remember, that was the first year. That was my wife and I were courting that. This was before we lived together. And we would go to the movies all the time. And one of the first movies we went to together was John Sayles' Brother from Another Planet with Joe Morton.
Yeah.
And Joe Morton, first of all, what a tremendous actor.
Yeah.
And what a tremendous performance he gave in that. But I also got to do a play with him recently. and work with him. And he's again, like, just to be around people like that and work with them, and I picked his brain a little bit about what it was like to work on Brother from Another Planet. And he's a very Joe Morton he's also he teaches at university. He's extremely articulate, and he'll go into something deeply with you. Yeah. What was distinctive to me about when I asked him about working on Brother from Another Planet was that he said that it was extremely nonverbal, the way that Sales and he communicated about the part, about the movie, and about the way it would evolve. It was very much an unspoken communique, and I just found that interesting. And of course, his character's so silent in it, so I guess that would make sense. But still, every project, every director with every actor is its own animal, and I think that's kind of amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you did Crazy People.
Yeah, wow.
I've read
that was I loved being on Crazy People, but we started out doing that movie, and we shot for 3 weeks and then closed down and replaced the lead actor in that and the director in that movie, and then resumed and shot for another 11, and then we shot for another 6 weeks, and then closed down, and we were on location in Virginia, in Chatham, Virginia, and the whole time we sat in the hotel room for 3 weeks while they were changing directors, and then we finished. We thought we finished it 6-7 weeks later, and then we went home, and then they called us about a month later, and they said, we have some significant reshoots we want to do in Los Angeles, so we need you for another 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So that film was filmed in 3 parts over a period of several months, and it was, I think, a very fun, very interesting, but funny film ultimately. But Dudley Moore, who was ended up being great in it, he was not the first guy in the part.
Yeah, I read John Malkovich and Michelle Pfeiffer were attached to the movie after they did Dangerous Liaisons, and they were briefly seeing each other. But then I guess when they broke up, then they were both out.
Yeah, but I mean, John was with us. He was with the film for a couple of weeks.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer, you're right that she never came on to that film, but and Daryl Hannah went in there, but John was on the film for a couple of weeks before he left. Oh. And there was pretty it was a pretty intense vibe on that set.
That's pretty interesting to go from John Malkovich to Dudley Moore.
It couldn't have been more different. It couldn't have been more different. But it really, I mean, a film is a evolving thing. It's a living thing too. And you could start out thinking it's supposed to be one way and find out that it really needs to be another. I mean, Woody Allen writes into his contract for every film weeks of reshoots. It's a given that he has it in his contract that he has the right to change the entire something very large in any film, that every film that he does. Mm-hmm. Of course, when he did he's Purple Rose of Cairo originally had Michael Keaton in the lead. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't working out, so Jeff Daniels took the part. But he shot a bunch of Purple Rose with Michael Keaton. And, you're not going to find a better actor than Michael Keaton or a better actor than John Malkovich. I mean, they're non-pareil. They're some of the best actors in the world. it's also true that them in that part that they were doing for the director or whatever, it wasn't clicking. You know, you can't click in every part. And I mean, Woody Allen, he filmed the whole role, an entire part with Sam Shepard. You remember Sam Shepard, of course.
Yep.
You know, and he was not only a great writer, but he was a magnificent film actor. But he shot a movie with Sam Shepard in the part, and then took the 3 weeks they gave him in his contract to replace him in the part with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And they shot that whole part with somebody else because it wasn't proper for the thing. Hell, mine is on a much smaller scale than this, but I mean, I was in a film by Todd Solondz, who's a pretty intense independent filmmaker, and I shot. This is the only part that I shot in the film that got cut out of the film.
Mm-hmm.
But I shot 10 scenes, and I went to see them, and they sent me a letter beforehand. They said, when you come and see the movie, don't be upset, but you're not going to be in it. And sure enough, they didn't leave a thing in there that I did.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work out. It wasn't right for the thing. You just don't know.
Wow.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
But it's all interesting, right? I mean,
right.
It's interesting.
After Paul Reiser did this movie, right, he was supposed to do a movie called Honeymoon Academy. He broke his leg just before filming, and so Robert Hayes had to take him over.
Really?
It was right after this movie, yeah.
Well, you can't work with a broken leg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stories about changing horses mid ride, or just somebody who was, something was written for them and they didn't do it. I mean, it goes all the way back to Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, right? I mean, I think George Raft was supposed to do that part. I had nothing against George Raft, but I sure as hell would have missed Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca.
Yeah.
He didn't do it. I think he was kind of a last-minute replacement.
Yeah.
I just think it's fascinating the way things come together or don't come together.
Mm-hmm. I've interviewed quite a few people who were supposed to play certain roles and then didn't get to, or they got completely cut from a movie with, the whole subplot was cut out or something. It's very interesting finding that out,
Yeah, I know. It is interesting. And sometimes when you see something, you can't imagine somebody else being in the part because they're so definitive or perfect in it. But sometimes you look at a part and you go, wow, somebody else might have really, kicked the hell out of that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Tony Bill, I have a guest who's working on trying to get him on here, and so hopefully it'll happen this year.
Oh, yeah. Well, he has had an interesting career.
Yeah.
He was the kid actor in Come Blow Your Horn with Frank Sinatra.
Yes, he was.
And then he directed all those films, and he produced Close Encounters of the Third Kind with Julia Phillips. He's had an interesting career.
He directed My Bodyguard, which turns 40 this year.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Oh, boy, that was in a blink of an eye, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's a 40-year blink right there for me. I remember seeing that movie in the movies.
Yeah.
That's a very good movie.
It is a very good movie. Yeah. So how was the McHale's Navy experience?
Well, it was kind of like an unwieldy whale that you pulled into your little boat, and you felt good about catching a really big fish.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, your little boat was too big, too small to hold that fish.
Yeah.
So it ended up kicking water and you ended up with sore arms. We were on location in Tenochtitlan and Manzanillo, Mexico for 3.5 months. Look, I should be the kind of person that's grateful, about everything that's a break. But, I'm also, human. And, I thought that film was, it wasn't what it could have been.
Yeah.
And there was with the writing and the directing, it was too unformed and too ill thought out. And when we were there, you really needed to have people who trusted in the talent that was in front of the camera. And I don't think that they did. And I think people were tense. So I have to say that was an experience like a big Hollywood film that at the time, I don't know, maybe in 1996 or so, it cost maybe $50 million to make.
Yeah.
And that's a hell of a lot of money. And I really don't think that the people making the film were up to it. And it was just it just wasn't that good. It just could have been funnier and better. And you had a lot of really, really funny actors in that film.
Yeah.
I mean, you had some serious talent in that film. So I lay that on the filmmakers.
Yeah, I read that Bruce Campbell didn't have a great time because, here he is, Ash from The Evil Dead, and his job is to follow Tom Arnold around in every scene and stuff. I just don't think he had a great time doing it. I think that's what made him get out of Hollywood after that, And
wow.
That same year, Universal did a reboot of Leave It to Beaver, which Bob Simons produced. And Bob Simons was riding high off of all the Sandler movies. I think that if he had produced this, maybe it would have turned out better, because he's got a really great eye for comedy and casting,
Wow, that's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that Bruce felt that way about it, because he is a very talented guy and a very funny guy. But again, I actually think Tom Arnold was pretty good, and I think he was. And like I said, if you not only have Bruce and myself, and you had like Deborah Messing and Dean Stockwell and Brian Haley and French Stewart.
Yeah.
And you had some funny people in that movie, and nobody felt like they could. Nobody felt that they were really being appreciated. I mean, I'm telling you, that was I don't lay that on Tom Arnold. I lay that on the people who were making the film.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my perspective. I'm not, I can't say for sure that that's true. That's just the way I feel.
Yeah, I get it though. So you've continued working. Did you have any projects before the pandemic that you were supposed to do?
You know what? I am not. I did not. I did not. I didn't have any acting projects. I have other things that I work on. I'm writing something, and I also I work. I have a regular. I have a job in the recovery field. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor.
Nice.
This year. Yeah, I've been working in a rehabilitation facility in Tarzana, California, and writing. I'm writing a book of short stories, a collection of short stories that I'm about 2/3 of the way into it, and I'm not writing about my experiences as a drug and alcohol counselor, but working in that field inspires me to because I am on the front line of human experience, the way I always was.
in the acting, fighting the acting wars, and also doing all the other jobs. I've done a lot of second jobs in my life as an actor, just to put chicken and peas on the table.
Yeah.
I've been a cab driver, and I've worked in stores, and I've always used my my other jobs as inspiration for the parts that I play and for the things that I write. So I did not have an acting project on hand, but I did have to furlough myself off of my job at the rehab center because frankly, the last week I was at work, I had to unfortunately take a young lady to the hospital who was having a seizure, and I sat with her in the hospital while she was being cared for. And, this was before everybody was wearing a mask. So I came home from work, and my wife asked me what I'd done that day. And I said I'd just been sitting with Lizzie in the hospital there, while she was getting cared for, and hanging out with her and just, telling her jokes and stuff, while she was feeling better. Anyway, my wife said, I don't feel comfortable with the fact that you've just spent the day in the hospital. I don't think that's very safe.
Yeah.
So I kind of gave my notice after that. So that was the only job, to be honest with you, that was the only job that was interrupted by the pandemic, and I miss it. I miss going to work.
Yeah.
At that.
I've been so.
I have a film in the can that I did, which was actually that was going to open at a film festival that and that might have been the pandemic might have put the kibosh on that, put it into a delayed release. But I did a terrific part in an indie film called Eye of God, and I play a very fascinating character in that, a Jewish hitman who, and I stress the fact that he's Jewish because that's he's a rabbi who's also a hitman, his talents are procured from the dark web, and this guy procures his this hitman to help him to commit suicide, and it's actually a black comedy, and I have it's a very arresting piece of writing, and it's a very interesting part. So I actually like to see that get some kind of release or some kind of play, film festival or something, so I could get myself in front of people again. So, but that's all I have on the shelf.
Wow, that's great though that you've helped people with alcohol and drug addiction. I've been sober for 5 years now, following a car accident that I had that put me in a coma for 30 days, and I wouldn't be talking to you or anybody on this show if I hadn't had that, because I was pretty lost during that time.
I'm so sorry to hear that you had that accident, but I'm happy for you that you have your sobriety.
Thank you. Yes, no, it's the greatest thing.
And of course, your life. That's wonderful to hear that you're in recovery like that, Tommy.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And now my brother and my mother are struggling with theirs, and I'm trying to get them help and stuff. And I just taking it day by day.
It touches a lot of our lives.
It does. Yeah,
it really does. And I'm really wow. I mean, my heart goes out to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it consumes our lives as well, but we take it day by day and just remain strong, But I think...
It's amazing.
Yeah, but I thank you so much for coming on today, Danton. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Tommy. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I really enjoyed it, and thank you for asking me.
My pleasure, and you have yourself a great day, and hopefully after this pandemic is over, you'll get back to work and continue creating amazing stories for the screen.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that sentiment. And so is this podcast, is this being played simultaneously with our conversation? Is that how that works?
Oh no, this is pre-recorded. I'm going to upload it to YouTube as soon as we're done.
And then how do I make it so that I can listen to it?
Go to my channel, Tommy Kovac. Just type in Tommy Kovac and my channel is there. It's a profile picture of me with Robert Englund.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, yeah. I'll do that.
Okay.
And again, pleasure to talk to you.
You too, sir. Have a great day.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Danton Stone. Ain't he a cool dude? Oh, man. That's great that he's helped people with addictions. I find that very amazing and inspiring that he's doing something, not just in acting, but in other areas as well. And helping someone get over addiction is an area that is one that needs to be addressed sometimes. And I'm just amazed that he was able to do that. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.